Hey YouTube, we are up to day 27 of the 31 Days of Tarot. You can check out the link in the description below to see all the prompts. You can also look back on my channel. I've been doing this every day, and you can search the hashtag for other folks' response to the prompts. So for day number 27, the question is, how do you pick your tarot decks for readings? Hold on tight, this is going to be a nerdy one. I have a spreadsheet. Okay, I'm not quite that bad. I don't literally plug in a formula and pull a deck, although if anybody wants a formula, I'm sure I can write you one. I actually intend to do a video in the future, let me know if you're interested, about that's kind of a combination beginner's data analysis for tarot people and beginner's tarot for data analysis people, where I like do a tour of how I did data analysis on my decks, on my daily pulls last year. Also, somebody had asked for a spreadsheet tour of my big tarot spreadsheet, so I'm gonna do it. You can watch that or not as you like, but subscribe if you're interested. Yeah, so I have this spreadsheet on my laptop that I record my deck interviews in, and so sorry, I'm gonna look to the right to describe what's here. So I do a deck interview. I actually do two now. I started doing two different spreads because they're a little bit different. One is more about one is the Little Red Tarot one, and it's more about, I find that it's like about the deck's personality in general, or like what is the deck about, you know, just generally, and there's a little bit of connection to you, but then I think it's a Lindsay Mack spread. I also do a 4-card spread that is more about like what the deck wants you to focus on right now. So it's more about you and the deck and the immediate. So I do that, and then after a year I do a re-interview to see how the deck's feeling about our work together. And so when I do those interviews, I write up the spread positions, what I got, and I write up an interpretation, but I also put in a column called When to Use. And so the When to Use column is a summary grabbing from the longer like interpretation of the two interviews. It's like, okay, this is probably good for these kind of readings, not these kind of readings. So an example, one of the most recent decks I acquired is the Triple Goddess Tarot I wrote from these interviews. So again, it's not generalizable, it's me doing the interview for me with that deck, so it's my copy of the deck, not yours. But When to Use, good for slower, longer-term emotional work, getting past heartbreak, learning to trust, supportive but straightforward deck, not so much for life balance work. So I'll try to write like, here are some topics that might be good, here are some that might not be good, and like here's the general energy if I'm picking up something from it. Again, it's from those interviews, so it might be that I get this deck with really fiery energy that's like, I want to do water and emotion, or vice versa. So it's really not about like my impression of the deck from looking at it, it's about the interview. Like, I just trust and listen to the deck. Now, it doesn't mean that I always pick based on that. I will sometimes just intuitively grab, it just feels right. So like, this feels like a numinous read, we're just gonna go with it. There's also some decks that I've been using for particular periods. So like in December, I was using Dark Days and Wanderer's Tarot a lot because I was getting all this void energy, and those felt right for that. I will use Numinous as sort of my bog standard deck, or the Wild Unknown, if I don't have a strong feeling, or sometimes I'll just grab one because it feels right. But if I am using the system, I actually transpose that column into another tab, which I call Deck Guidance. Again, I'll do an actual tour so you can see this, so subscribe if you're interested, but for now, Deck Guidance. So I then have, because I don't want to necessarily look at each individual deck if I'm trying to pick one, but if I can't quite remember what, if I'm like, oh, what were the decks that were good for this kind of reading, I have a topic column, decks to use and decks not to use. So, and the topics can be, some of them are themes, some of them are like the type of reading, like if you want a really fiery reading versus, like if you need the reading to kick your ass versus you need a gentle reading. So I'll have things like, here are decks to use for shadow work if you're open to it. Here are decks to use if you're feeling more reluctant about shadow work. Like, here are some decks for new relationships, for feeling cynical about love early on. So some of them are really specific from the interviews. When feeling stuck, when feeling depressed, earlier in projects, later in projects. And then I have things like needing gentle support, less fiery. need a clear answer. So some of them, like, there's a spread position in the interviews that's like, you know, how do you deliver information? So some of them will be like, I'm going to be really clear, and some of them are like, you're not going to know what the hell I'm saying. So I'll take note of that and put it in here. I very rarely actually look at this. It's more that, like, the process of typing it out reminds me, but it is there for me, and occasionally if I'm doing something really specific, I will look at it. When I do Facebook, sometimes on Facebook, I'll just be like, anybody want a reading? And I'll do a few cards. For those, I often will look at this and specifically pick a deck for them based on their question. But I use questions less. I've noticed that for myself, I tend to actually do general readings. So sometimes it's as vague as like, you know, this whole situation that's been going on for the past few days, what guidance do I need about that? So often it's a question like that that's sort of referencing something, but it's not, there's like elements of it. And so I'm like, give me whatever guidance related to any of those elements. So it's not like, I don't often be like, here's a love question, here's a work question. Or I'll use spreads, and I'll often use spreads that are time-based. So like, this is a new moon in Capricorn spread or whatever. That's just how I do it. I'm really curious to hear what other people have to say about this. And, you know, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. We're almost done with the challenge, but I will continue to post at least a tarot video a week, most weeks on my channel. Thanks for stopping by.